Welcome, everyone. The title of this session is Indians of North America, Improving the PreK-12 Collection. The Fall 2010 NAS 488 Native American Service Learning Class project evaluated Native American materials in the PreK-12 collection. The project identified inaccurate representation of Native Americans in these books. They withdrew some material and enhanced the records of books to provide tools to demonstrate the necessity of critical thinking when choosing and evaluating material to share with students. 515 books were identified, reviewed, and categorized. Outcomes from the project include creating a criteria for evaluation of Native American titles, enhanced records, a baseline list of titles, a list of titles recommended to add, and an opportunity to work with students and faculty in different departments to increase value of the books we do have. This is Sarah Jane Tompkins. She is a reference librarian at Northern Michigan University. Sarah Jane also manages the PreK-12 collection at Olson Library. As liaison to the Center for Native American Studies, she maintains the Native American material of the Olson Library collection. Tompkins received her undergraduate degree from NMU and Masters of Literature,
Masters of Information and Library Science, MLIS,
from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So, you guys, welcome, Sarah. Sarah Jane. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate that you are all here. This is a wonderful thing to do. I accidentally mentioned to Marty that I was doing a poster on this project. Actually, it was accepted at the International Indigenous Conference on Libraries, Archives, and Museums. Totally thrilled with that. And he goes, that was a service learning project. You need to turn it into a presentation. So that's why I'm here, and I think it was a good thing. It's helped me to just dig through all the material that I have. Starting out, there was much more material than I could have used, so that was a really good place to start from instead of what am I going to say. So to preface the search, this is, or the process, that's how it kind of came about. I've been at Northern since 2001, and I've been responsible for the PreK-12 collection since 2005. There's about 20,000 books in the collection, and this is just a room on the main floor of the library. It's the second floor that you come in off the quad from. Upstairs is where there's another 600,000 to 800,000 books, but mine are just in a small room on the main floor. The title, Indians of North America, probably doesn't mean anything specific to you, but for a librarian it's very specific. It is the Library of Congress subject heading that's used to indicate in the library record that this book has something to do about Native Americans. So when I'm helping students at the reference desk, sometimes they'll say, well, I need to have something about Ojibwa Indians, and then I start typing out Indians in North America, and they kind of look at me and it's like, what is she doing? Well, that's the way the Library of Congress has decided it should be categorized. It wasn't a category until 1985, and it has been modified once in 2009. I don't know what they did, but that's the background for the title. Okay, the process, I went to April and I said I have this idea. I have these 20,000 books that I'm sure there's Native American material in there, and I would like to know if it's accurate or not, and if there's something we can do about that. So I went to the class, and there was about a half a dozen students there, and one student, Cassie Gilbert, said that really sounds like something I would enjoy. And so she met with me. We kind of sat down and we did a project outline. We decided what the priorities were, the criteria, the outcomes, all those things that were previously mentioned. And this is the fall of 2010 that this happened. So she indeed did look at all those 515 books. She was very deliberate, very, very methodical. She's a great communicator. She was just a wonderful student to work with. When it was all done, I told her, I said, there is no way this is just going to stay in a folder. You have done such good work. It needs to be kind of shown to other people. So that's where this is coming from. So of those 515 books, she put them in 3 different categories. One was books that cause concern. There was 36 titles that she identified, and one was books recommended for removal, and that was 58 titles. And that leaves a little over 400 that were okay. So that's the good news. The collection isn't way off base. I'm going to read from Cassie's her analysis and critique of what she wants this project to be like. And again, this is from September of 2010. Purpose. The purpose of this project is to ultimately present an accurate representation of Native Americans to Native and non-Native youth through literature. In too many cases, American Indians are misrepresented in all forms of media, often in disrespectful, offensive, and degrading ways. This project is designed to end this in the PreK-12 collection of Olson Library. The ultimate goal is to remove any piece of literature that would make a Native child feel insulted or embarrassed. And then one of her reflections, which is part of the process, is, while I have by no means finished my research, I have already seen the flaws in the way that Native Americans are displayed in literature and movies. It is astounding to me that these images, which seem so obviously flawed and prejudiced to me now, are so accepted in popular culture. Unfortunately, these images start early in children's books. All children, especially Native children, should not see Indians as objects to be counted in counting books, as sometimes that animals can play dress up as, or children, or as extinct. I think it is extremely important that these misrepresentations be removed, especially where children are concerned. I look forward to continuing to change my own perspectives and to learning to easily pinpoint some of the more subtle distortions found in literature. So she's jumped into the project. She's well on her way to just kind of swim through all this information. So I forgot to do my slides. Okay, I went through that. Okay, criteria, and obviously the criteria is going to address the issues of bias, stereotype, negative portrayal, and then this, I say, not recognized as problematic, and that would be where I feel like the cultural appropriation come in, that people just take it without any consideration and change it, and they're not informed or educated enough to realize what they've done. And then evaluation issues that come up, and we'll talk about that. But the first thing I'm going to do before I go into another slide is I have this list of, that Cassie made, and it's recognizing bias toward Native American youth and literature. And it's in categories of author, illustrator, content, and I'm just going to read a couple of them so you can kind of see the process she's going through and what she's thinking about as she begins to deal with this. What qualifies the author to write about Native Americans? Is he or she Native? Does the author ever degrade the story or try to rationalize it based on his or her own culture? Does the author attempt to make non-existent comparisons between their culture and the one they write about? Content. Is the standard for success based on white mainstream society, or do natives have their own standard and cultural norm? Are white figures considered the most beautiful or virtuous, and dark figures considered ugly, evil, or menacing? Are white people required to solve the problem? Do whites have all the power? Do natives have any? Is the story completely fiction or made up by the author and just stated in a native-sounding way? I'm not reading all these, I'm just kind of skimming through because there's sub-points beneath all of them. Are natives portrayed as full-fledged and complete human beings? Is the history accurate? Under stereotypes, are all Indians clumped together as one, not recognizing individual tribes, cultures, or languages? Is the vanishing Indian portrayed? Indians portrayed as no longer existing, as an extinct race? And under illustrations, avoid stereotypes in illustrations, avoid tokenism, and what roles are Indians shown in? Avoid caricatures and mock natives. And two questions that she adds to the bottom of this are, is there anything that would make a Native child feel insulted or ashamed of his or her identity? And is there anything in the book that would limit a child's goals, aspirations, or dreams in any way? So those are some of the questions she tried to answer as she was evaluating these 515 books. And some of the tools that were used for evaluation are a broken flute, and we have these books in the library, and that's just a good source. It's probably 80% book reviews, okay, and I have the 2005 edition there, and then Through Indian Eyes, I have that also. It's a little bit older edition. And then I have 3 websites that are up there. The top one, American Indians and Children's Literature, is actually a blog, and it's always up to date. She does a wonderful job of dealing with books that have just been published and crossing literature genres that she's really right on target. And then IOT, and also a critical bibliography of North American Indians is that icon up there. So those were some of the criteria that we used to evaluate the books. And so the next thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to take a book that we've withdrawn from the collection and show you how we did that. So here I have a book called Winged Moccasins, The Story of Sacagawea, published in 1954. Here you can see the Library of Congress subject headings: Indians of North America, biography, Sacagawea, Lewis and Clark. You can see there's 2 different spellings of Sacagawea, for whatever reason that is. So I have withdrawn this book. It leaves about 5 other copies of books about Sacagawea in the collection. 2 or 3 of them are actually on a lower level, reading level. It's just the primary, where Winged Moccasins is more of the high school level. So, and this is the book that's replacing that, Sacagawea by Joseph Burchak. Okay, and he's a well-regarded author. We have several of his books in the collection, but this is what is going to replace that. And so I want to read what Cassie identified as questionable reviews about this book. So in the book About Indians, it's a Canadian publication, and I have a list of the sources that I used to evaluate there. I quote, "A highly fictionalized account of Sacagawea that reinforces the stereotype of the Indian. The values and attitudes which the author puts forth as Indian in this book are false and reflect a lack of understanding of Indian people. Not recommended." And then the second book that she referred to is Literature by and About the American Indian. And again, these books, we have them all in the library. Quote, "The story of her life with them," Lewis and Clark, "is well known, but there is uncertainty about what happened to her afterwards. From the slight historical evidence about Sacagawea's life, the author has put together what is probably her entire story." And this reviewer refers back to About Indians and concurs that it should not be recommended. These are the sources that I'm reading from: About Indians, books on American Indians and Eskimos, and literature about the American Indian. Some books obviously have multiple reviews, so there's a way for you to measure how many pros and cons for you to figure out if it's valuable or not. This one I'm going to read again. It's kind of it's interesting. It's full of frustration for me. Okay, quote, "The Indian girl is apparently so restless that she imposes herself upon the male world and is constantly apologetic for intrusion. For example, in this book, Sacagawea kills a deer with a stone, but hides her prowess by saying that her brother should take credit for the kill. Throughout the book, she is described as different in a negative sense, not in the same way as, say, Sitting Bull or Black Hawk are usually described," unquote. And then a quote at the end of the section. Quote, "Although the story is highly romanticized and often as sugary as the title suggests, some young readers may find redeeming qualities such as ingenuity, perhaps the person most responsible for the success of the expedition." And they say it's adequate. And I say this sounds like evaluation or review that was written by someone that doesn't really have a clue about the history of Sacagawea. That's my gut level feeling about it. Okay, so what we started with this baseline list of titles that we worked through, the 515 titles. Now I have those separated from my collection of 20,000, and I can massage that and work with it and break it down. Right now I'm working on a bibliography specifically in the collection that deals with the boarding school history. So those titles can be pulled out and I can show those to students. I meet with students in my office on their specific research needs, and I can use this baseline to work from. I can also look at the usage statistics. Some of these remaining 420 odd books are so old, they haven't been used. Maybe they really don't need to be in the collection because they're off topic. They don't support the curriculum that we're teaching here. And then also from this, the titles that are left, when I add a title to the collection that has the heading of Indians of North America, I can add it to that list. And then also there's the problem of I'm coming upon more books that did not have the heading Indians of North America, usually because the book was so old that that heading hadn't even been categorized yet. So Thanksgiving, books with Native in the title, I have another card of books that I need to review from that aspect. And along with that, I have this book that falls into that category. This did not come up on the list because the heading isn't in there. But this is a book that was published in 1972. There's 2 copies in the library. It gets a lot of use. Just the last year, it's been checked out. Both copies have been checked out, multiple uses. I can't find a review for it anywhere. This book was published by Northern, okay? So there's another whole gamut of books that aren't reviewed, and I'm not the person that can feel like I can make the final decision on that. So that's another curiosity. So then we come up with, Cassie had completed a list of 36 titles that she said should be added to the collection. She used some of the bibliographies from the review books to build that list. She used Broken Flute. She used American Indians in Children's Literature, I Is Not for Indian, and Children's Book Press to put together this list of 36, and I have a copy over there. At this point, we've purchased 5 of those titles. I have limited funds. I can't do everything I want to do. But even of those 36 titles, I need to focus, to better spend my money, focus on material that relates to the Great Lakes tribes. So I'm not going to buy books that are about somewhere else in the country that I don't feel meets our needs here. And then I'm going to select material that supports the curriculum. And I gave you the demonstration of the boarding school titles. And the last thing I'm going to do, and I've already ordered the 2014 award titles that were given out by the American Indian Library Association, and I'll just read those to you so you might recognize them. Caribou Song by Thompson Highway, How I Became a Ghost, a Choctaw Trail of Tears story by Tim Tingle, and Killer of Enemies by Joseph Burchak. So those have been added. Okay, I just needed to highlight this because I think even when you're doing a project and you just feel like you're affecting one person, I think sometimes that can be more than you realize. And Cassie was just a delightful student to work with. She took this project, she owned it, she was conscientious, she was polite, she was considerate, and she was a great communicator. All of the written work that she gave me and everything that is here is all of her work. I just had the idea. So I can't speak highly enough about what the students' work was. And then the staff, center staff, now they know I'm doing this. They can help me with recommendations or catch me when I'm off, which has happened, which is exactly what I want to happen. And then library student staff, I have a student worker in my little collection that comes in every week, and so she's helping me pull all these books, and I'm working on my PowerPoint and getting it all together. And she said, "What are you doing?" She's an education major. I said, "Come in and sit down, I'll tell you." And so I was able to just really give her a short instruction on what was happening, and she is now more aware. So that's, again, just a one-on-one. Education faculty, I told there's a liaison to the library from the education faculty that I work with, and I told her what I was doing and what the results were, that these 58 titles were recommended for removal, and I said that we have a problem. What are we going to do with this problem? And she's giving me a different frame of reference to look at this. She says, yes, this is a problem, but it's also an opportunity to teach. We are going to keep some of these titles that are offensive in the collection, specifically to instruct the pre-service teachers on critical analysis. When you're looking at a piece of material, how do you determine that it's valuable and something that you want to share with your classroom or not? So some of the titles that seem offensive will be kept. Yes?
How do you label them?
I'm going to show you. Yeah. So that's how that works. Maybe it's right. It's the next one, enhanced records. So we have these 58 titles of some which have been removed. And this book here, Missions of the Los Angeles Area, published in 1994, has a negative review in the Broken Flute. Curiously enough, it's never been checked out. So we've had that since 1994, and no one has checked it out. I think it kind of enforces my thought that we need to buy things that are more regionally located. So let me just show you what the record looks like here. Well, what did I do? Okay. Okay, so here's, help.
I thought you meant to do that.
Oh, okay. So it just doesn't look like it, but it's there.
Here, let's change that.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, yeah. So again, this is a good example of all these are Library of Congress subject headings. So if you're doing keyword search and you put in any of these terms, it would bring this record up. If you're doing a keyword search, anything in this record that is written here would bring up this record as an option. But what I want to show you down here under links, it says, this title contains material that could be deemed culturally insensitive, refer to Native American children's and young adult literature, and that actually is a hot link. And this is what we've done with the 58 titles at this point. And from here, it gives you links and information on evaluation sources. So we have in American Indians and Children's Literature, that's the one I talked about earlier. Native American Themes in Children and Young Adult Books, a critical bibliography of North American Indians for K-12. And then this is where we got kind of put together the things we were going to use to evaluate. And then the print resources. American Indian Reference and Resource, Books for Children and Young Adults, Broken Flute, Children's and Young Adults Literature by Native Americans. And again, we have all these books in the library. So the record takes you to this page where you can then either go to the websites and try to find a review of the book, or check those books out and look for it.
So really on the shelf, it doesn't have anything indicating that it is maybe culturally insensitive or racist or anything like that?
Right, and that's a discussion we had, and it's still an open discussion. If we put something on the book, where do we put it that's going to be the place that people are going to look all the time? So we don't want to put it on the back. We don't know if we should put it inside, or if you have information or feedback about what you think would be
We have,
appropriate for that.
Well, for ours, we have a section that we call good examples of a bad example.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I mean, but we have a smaller library, so I mean,
And where do you put that label on the book?
not on the book.
Oh, it's on the
shelf.
whole, it's on the shelf.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So we have one shelf, well, we have many different books that we have, but we only have a certain number out there.
Right, right, okay. Yeah, that's something that we're trying to figure out what to do with that, because this is the electronic print, but there's also the in print, the on the shelf. How do you?
Should put like big red flashing, whoa.
Yeah. So I don't have an answer, but I know it's a question that needs an answer. And I'm just going to spend a minute reading the review for this Missions of the Los Angeles area. Yay. Okay, and this is from the Broken Flute again. On page 73 of Missions of the Los Angeles area, there is one sentence that is most clear. Many Native Americans view the missions not as monuments, but as places that cause death and suffering for thousands of Indians. Yet the books, for the most part, excuse and minimize what the missionaries did to our peoples. They prettify genocide, and they don't give us a place to mourn or to grieve or to tell our stories. The problems of these books, taken one at a time, may seem small, but it is these nibblings at our pride that undermine the future of our native children. I am afraid that because these books are supposedly attractive, easy to read, they will be used in many, many California classrooms. And then the reviewer kind of gives a personal glimpse of what this means to them. I showed these books to my nieces, one a 4th grader and one a 5th grader. The girls didn't like the print size, the format, the condescending attitude, and the pan-Indian graphics. Violet said, "These books make it seem that the natives were savages, and thank goodness that the white man came and saved them." Her sister, Doc, said, "Can we stop now? These books are giving me a headache." So that's the reality of what these books mean. Okay, so I have this list of 58 titles that I've removed these titles, and I'm actually at this point working with the education faculty to identify the titles we will keep that will be used for demonstration purposes and remove the rest, and then I'll probably move on to that list of 36 titles that caused concern and make final decisions on that. But on these books here, the date of publication ranged from 1948 to 1989. I think that's kind of indicative. Hopefully, as we educate ourselves, there won't be as many books that are published that are offensive. So it's a start. Okay, so I'm like, this is all a process, but we're working on it. And as I was, I'm on the web, I'm looking at reviews online, and I'm trying to make decisions about books, and it dawns on me that one of the what else's is you can go into Barnes & Noble or you can go into Amazon and you can make a comment about a book that's there that you know is offensive and specifically educate people about what's going on. There's lots of sources, book sources, that there's ways for you to make comment. And even with your public libraries, sometimes I think on the web there's places where you can have a comment or a suggestion about a title. And along with that, have recommendations for books that are good. I mean, it's one part of the piece to say these are all bad, but we need to complete it with what is good. So we're not, we're bringing it full circle and helping to educate people. The first evaluation had holes in it. I was explaining how the books on Thanksgiving haven't been looked at because there wasn't a classification in there for Indians in North America. And as I go through, I'm actually in the process of weeding all the nonfiction in this collection, and it's never been weeded before. Okay, so we're talking about the 60s, the 1960s, and I'm finally working my way through. I'll find other things, and I'll just set it on that shelf to be reviewed. and how to come to a decision on books that I can't find reviews on, and that is happening with some of the older books. And then continue to become familiar with the evaluation sources. And you too can review the sites that I've put up there or check the books out and just see how they're formatted and how they work. I'm just going to end with a couple quotes from The Broken Flute. The first quote is from Doris Seal. She's one of the editors of that book. Quote, "Taking something that has not been offered to you does not make it yours. That makes it stolen. Stories are never free," unquote. And then from Beth Brandt, and these are both in the introduction, I believe, quote, "Words are sacred, not because of the person transmitting them, but because words themselves come from a place of mystery that gives meaning and existence to life," unquote. And then she further talks about the power of words, that words can cause pain, words can cause war, but that words can also cause healing and reconciliation. And so I hope that's where this will go. And that's the end of my presentation, and I would love to hear comments and questions. From the select group. Yes?
How was it decided on Northern's website then, where you put that, the link,
Mm-hmm.
says, this is a book of concern, or if they could take out what was read, to put it right there? How was that decision kind of arrived at?
Well, actually, you know what I did? I'm in a listserv with American Indian Library Association, and I told them what I was going to do. And that was one suggestion they had, is somehow make a statement in the record that will give people a heads up that the book they're considering checking out might be questionable.
I was wondering about the location of it on that page.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that I would notice that.
Well, it's above where you would, it's above the call number. So let's see. Hang on a second. Okay, now I'm confused. Okay. Thank you. So I'll show you the record here, and you'll see that.
Oh, it is a different, is it only a different color once you click on it?
No, it is always, because it's a hot link.
Okay.
Yeah. And just, you might not be interested in this, but it's interesting. So this is what we see, but what the technical service staff works with is this view here. This is everything that they have, and there's even more fields, but this determines where you can put alphanumeric things and where you can put notes and where you can put hot links. There's only certain places in the record that you can do that. So you can see that it's in the 856 field, and actually we first had it as a note, but then it seemed separate from the link, so that's why we kind of put it all together, and so it looks like the whole phrase and the link is what you're connecting to. But so we have restrictions on how we can actually do this because of this system. But our thought was,
What does the 856 mean?
um,
Is this one of your codes, or is that?
yeah, that's where you can put a URL. That's where you can put,
Okay.
because if you're looking at our library catalog and you see an ebook, that's where the link would be to the ebook also. But we can't just put that anywhere in those fields. It has to go in the 856 field. But as you can see, it's above the call number, so theoretically you would have to look at the whole record to get down here if you're going to check it out or not. So that's why I think it's a reasonable place for placement. Yes.
I love the criteria for evaluation that the student faculty came up with. Appreciate that. I'm just wondering how widespread that document is. Have you shared that with other local libraries, or has anyone shown interest?
No, this is the first, and as I say, getting ready for this poster, just kind of putting this all together. So this was all finished, by December, January 2011, and I kind of got off track with some other things, and now I'm kind of refreshed my energy and I'm back. I'm trying to push it through, so.
Yeah, I'm just kind of shocked, and I think this is such important work that's being done. So almost 100 of the 500 books in the collection, and I would think that, at a university, that there would be kind of a higher level of conscientiousness too, and I'm wondering at some of the public libraries, how much maybe, how many more of these books of concern there might be in these different collections.
Right.
So, is this being talked about on a national level at all?
Not with librarians, not that I'm aware of, yeah. Yeah, that's,
Is this something that you would be able to take to, the Library Association conferences or something like that?
yes,
Yeah.
and it might come to that with this thing I'm doing in June. I'm doing a poster presentation of this. It's sponsored by the American Indian Library Association, but it's the Association of Tribal Archives, Librarians, and Museums, but it's their international conference. So I'm hoping that this will be a place, and if I already have this ready, I have a presentation, keep improving on it, that maybe it's something that at some point could be useful. Sometimes what happens, I'm an academic librarian, but I'm not always, I'm with the children's books, so I'm in this weird place where sometimes I'll go to conferences and it's all academic librarians, and we're talking about everything that's up on the third floor. We're not talking about how school pre-service teachers are reacting and creating lesson plans and learning how to critically analyze literature, and so that's another, I'm kind of in this weird place.
So like the National Indian Education Association, have you considered that one?
No,
That
that's,
would be an excellent one to attend.
okay, yeah.
I know that they have an annual meeting in this October. It's up in Anchorage, Alaska.
Oh, wow,
So
okay.
that's the kind of thing that would be excellent with those kind of,
Okay, and what was that?
the National Indian Education Association.
Okay,
That way you'll have, also Title VIIs, a lot of them go to those and principals, and that way you'd be able to actually find the people who would be working with the kids.
right, yep. Oh, that's great, thank you. And I know part of what Cassie was doing, she had a Title VII component. She was going to do this kind of demonstration with the students, and it was in Gwyn, I know. And April would have to help me out with this. I don't know if it was like chicken pox or head lice or something happened that week, and it was like, that was the only week Cassie could do it, and everybody had lice, or, you know what I mean? You know how it can be, like it just fell apart, because she couldn't go that week, and it didn't work. But I think, for me, I feel like this is just the start. If I work with the education faculty, maybe the English faculty, to actually put a presentation together that takes this book, like this dreadful book right here, and we educate you, we say, do you know why this is dreadful? Do you know why this is horrible? And if you're trying to teach your child how to read, there's other choices, and actually demonstrate, have the tools in our hands to do that. So that's what I hope is the next step from this. Because I think some of the pre-service teachers, they don't understand, they don't know. So it will be a beginning anyway. Yes?
So you said you still have work to do. Is there room then for additional service learning projects? Working with the materials that are still in the collection?
Yeah, there might be. I'd have to, because I found more books and there might be work. Yeah, I think there could be. I'd have to think about it.
Nonfiction, we still have to look at.
Yep. Yeah, and just how to create a format for instruction from this perspective. How can we demonstrate and teach people how to change their thinking, or at least reconsider things.
Have you reviewed, I think it's called the American Girls Collection? Kaya, I think it is. Have you
Okay.
seen that?
We don't have any of those books in the collection, but I've heard of the American
Yeah.
Girl. Okay.
I was just wondering what they said about that one, because, I mean, just looking at the cover of the book, it's like, well, I didn't read the books myself, but just, knowing American Girls and the type of book that they have, and then the cover of the book, they were donated to our center.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so I was very hesitant on putting them out, but we still have them, like, on our little section for review.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that Broken Flute is published 2005, but I don't know, I mean, I could check.
well, we have, Oyate and Broken Flute, and.
Okay,
What is, Oyate has, How to Tell the Difference.
yes, yep. Yeah, there's lots of good tools that I found and forwarded to Cassie, and which I think she used when she developed her criteria, that I got from my listserv when I went and asked for help. Where should I start? How do I figure out what's the first question, so.
So did, as far as, working with the education department, I mean, we should be hand in hand with the education department, because these are the people who are going out and working with our children.
Exactly. This is where something could really make a difference.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And between, the Native American Studies and what you're doing, I mean, that should be a whole class right there that
Right.
is required
Yeah.
for the education students.
Well, I'm hoping that this lesson plan or this presentation could easily be done with someone from the center and me, and it would be something that's always taught in the 200 and 300 children's literature courses. It will take one session. I mean, you can't take over the class, but
Right.
I work with Sandy Emdike, and she's always very willing to have me come in and instruct in her class. So
Yeah.
I think, you can talk to 30 students, and they then teach how many students, it could really be a great start. So I totally agree with you. If you want to do some kind of coordination with that, that would be great.
Good. Working on the books has always been one of my passions, because, boy, there's so many racist books out there, and I mean, even some of them, oh my goodness, they're just terrible. And I would hate to see them being used. And even when, going around to book sales or yard sales, thrift stores, when I come across those books, I always feel inclined to buy them and destroy them. Because I don't want anyone looking at those things as, learning about Indians.
Yep, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
That works into a question I was gonna ask too. It seems so obvious to me to be able to provide a list to, school libraries across the country. Like, these are terrible books. Put them in your collection. And have them just removed from the shelf. But I'm sure that there are obstacles to that. What are some of, what for you too, what are some of the problems that you encounter when it comes to the process of removing a book? I mean, is it as easy as librarians just being able to take them off, or are there things that you
Right.
come up against?
Well, the only one that I can think of, because I've talked to people about this, is I have a right to look at anything I want to look at. You can't tell me what I can look at and take books off the shelf. If I want to read Little Chief, I should be able to read Little Chief. So that's all they say,
Yeah.
Um,
But they should also, you're totally entitled to read it, but you should also be aware of how insensitive it is. And if anyone has any sensitivity to other people's feelings, I mean, they should be aware of it at least. So this little message that you're putting up there, I mean, that's a good start.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
nothing before
Yeah.
this, okay?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And even compared, like Peter White has filters for their internet access, and they might be willing to filter things, but even on an academic level, people think they should be able to look at anything because they're trying to learn about anything, so I haven't gotten there yet, but I think we might be having that conversation at some point where you can't just take all that stuff out of there. I mean, that happened, or that's real. Okay, well, yeah, there was missions in California, but was it the way that it's being presented here? Do you want the real story or something different?
So in a sense then, if you're talking about, okay, all of these are just really terrible books, you should really take them off the shelf, then what you're saying also, what you talk about is like, okay, let's replace them with these ones that have been reviewed, have been written by Native people from that area,
Mhm.
something like that.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
I can see that. Yeah, I mean, if I had the choice, I would love to just say, get them off the shelf.
Mhm.
Just do it.
Yep.
But kind of what you're saying too is like, well, if you don't get them off the shelf and people don't see that, like we have people coming in and we don't have this.
Yeah.
And so if we didn't have it in the section where it says good, good example of a bad example, if
Mhm.
they didn't know that and they saw it, they would say you're endorsing this.
Right. Right.
If they just went to that shelf and they picked out a book randomly.
Mhm. Hmm. Yep. It's a can. It's a can of.
It is, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all your feedback and questions, and stay tuned.